My wife told me she wanted a divorce on Christmas morning, right after our kids opened their gifts. Before I start, ensure to subscribe, like, and drop a comment too. Christmas morning is supposed to be magical. At least that's what I always believed, what I grew up believing, what I tried to give to my kids year after year without fail. There's something sacred about the chaos of torn wrapping paper on the floor, the way a child's eyes light up when they realize Santa really came, the smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven while the dog runs in circles chasing after ribbons and squeaky toys. Christmas morning, for me, was always the one untouchable pocket of peace in a year that was otherwise unpredictable. So when my wife turned to me, just after our kids had unwrapped the last of their gifts, and said, without a single tremor in her voice, that she wanted a divorce, something inside me broke in a way I didn't fully understand until much, much later. It wasn't just the timing, although that was cruel enough. It was the delivery, the quiet, cold efficiency of it. Like she had been waiting for the last toy to be opened, for the last, "Thank you, Mommy," to be said, for the exact moment when the kids were distracted by their new gadgets and Legos and plastic ponies before she dropped a grenade in the center of our lives and calmly stood back to watch it explode. She didn't cry. She didn't ask me to sit down. She didn't even lower her voice. "I think we should get a divorce," she said, while I was still kneeling by the tree, watching our son assemble his new race car track. The words felt foreign, like I'd heard them in a language I barely understood, and for a second I just stared at her, waiting for her to laugh or say she was joking. But her face didn't move, not even the corners of her mouth. She wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She looked like she was reciting a weather report. I remember blinking at her, my hand still resting on a box of batteries, and asking her, stupidly, desperately, "Right now?" She nodded. I didn't want to ruin Christmas for the kids. But I can't pretend anymore. And just like that, she stood up, walked into the kitchen, and started cleaning the coffee mugs like she hadn't just driven a blade through the center of our family. I sat there for a long time, watching my daughter braid her new Barbie's hair, my son already losing pieces to the puzzle I spent hours wrapping. Felt like a ghost. Like I'd died and no one had told my body to lie down. I could still hear Bing Crosby playing softly in the background. I could still smell the sugar cookies. But I couldn't feel any of it. Not really. Not like I used to. When I finally stood up and followed her into the kitchen, she didn't even turn around. She was scrubbing the mugs a little too hard, like she was trying to avoid looking at me. Or maybe like she needed to keep her hands busy so she wouldn't change her mind. Asked her why. Not because I didn't know something had been wrong. We'd been distant for a while, I'll admit that. But because I never expected this. Not on Christmas. Not with the kids still in footy pajamas. She sighed, set the mug down, and wiped her hands on a towel before finally turning to face me. And that's when she said the line that will live with me for the rest of my life. "Because I haven't loved you in years, and I don't want to keep lying in front of the children." That sentence hit harder than anything I've ever experienced. I've been laid off from jobs, I've lost people I loved, I've been in car accidents. But nothing compares to standing barefoot in your own kitchen on Christmas morning and realizing the person you've built your life with sees you as a stranger. The details spilled out slowly over the next few days. She hadn't met anyone else, she claimed. It wasn't about someone new, but about years of slow erosion. About resentment. About incompatibility. About how we'd become roommates instead of lovers, project managers instead of partners. I kept trying to replay the last few months in my head, searching for signs that I missed. She'd been colder, yes. She spent more time with her sister, took longer showers, went to bed with a book more often than not. But we still went to the kids' school events. We still talked about what to make for dinner, whether the dog needed shots, what shows to binge. I thought that was marriage. I thought that was life settling in. I thought love could be quiet and still be real. I didn't know how to tell our kids. I didn't know how to sit our son down and explain that Mommy and Daddy weren't going to live in the same house anymore. I didn't know how to look our daughter in the eye when she showed us the drawing she made of our perfect Christmas family, with 4 smiling stick figures in front of a bright green tree. So I didn't say anything that first day. Or the next. We agreed to wait until after the holidays to have the conversation, which meant I had to sit across from her during Christmas dinner, pretending we were still what the kids believed we were. Pretending I hadn't just been told, in no uncertain terms, that the marriage I thought I had was already over. I spent the entire week walking through molasses. We took the kids sledding. We drank hot chocolate. We watched Home Alone for the millionth time. And every time she laughed at a joke or tucked a blanket around one of them, I hated her a little more for pretending so easily while I was barely holding it together. On New Year's Eve, she stayed in with the kids while I went for a long drive. I ended up at the lake we used to go to in college, back when we were still too young to know what we were doing, back when love felt like fire instead of frost. I sat there until midnight, the fireworks echoing in the distance, and realized I had no idea what my life was supposed to look like now. It's been 6 months since that morning. We're separated now. She stayed in the house. I moved into an apartment not far from the kids' school. We've started the custody conversations. Civil but cold. She wants as close to 50-50 as possible, and I don't blame her. She's still a good mother. But I don't know if I'll ever trust her again. I see my kids 3 nights a week and every other weekend. I watch them adjust to the 2 homes, the 2 bedrooms, the 2 sets of clothes. I hear the confusion in their voices when they ask why mommy doesn't come with us anymore. I see the way my son glances toward the door every time I pick him up, like he's waiting for me to come back inside. I miss the house. I miss the little things. I miss brushing past her in the kitchen, miss the smell of her shampoo, miss Sunday mornings with pancakes and music playing too loud. But more than anything, I miss the version of me who believed that love was permanent. I'm in therapy now. I'm trying to untangle the years and figure out what was real and what was just performance. I'm trying to rebuild myself from the splinters. But some mornings, especially when I wake up alone in the quiet of this unfamiliar place, I still hear her voice in my head, that flat, casual delivery that unraveled our life. I want a divorce. And then I hear the sound of wrapping paper being torn in the background. And I remember that she waited until after the last gift. And somehow, that still hurts more than anything else. In the months that followed, I began to understand that divorce is not a single event. It is 1,000 small cuts, a series of dissolving certainties that you never realize are disappearing until you look around one morning and find there's nothing left holding you together. It wasn't the big moments that undid me. Signing the papers, dividing the accounts, packing up my half of the dishes into cardboard boxes that looked too fragile to carry the weight of the life we'd shared. Those moments were awful in a clean, surgical way, a pain so obvious you could point to it and say, "Here. This is why it hurts." But what broke me again and again were the small reminders that nothing was the same and never would be. Like the first time I went to the grocery store alone and realized I didn't know which brand of yogurt the kids liked best because she was always the one who bought it. Or the night I found a tiny pink sock wedged into the corner of my suitcase, a leftover from the last time I packed a bag for a family trip that would never happen again. Or the Saturday morning I woke up in the apartment to the sound of rain tapping the windows and reflexively reached for her in bed, only to find a hollow space and the cold imprint of my own loneliness. That winter blurred into spring with a sickening inevitability. There were custody mediations and polite text exchanges about pickups and drop-offs, and sometimes we managed to pretend we were just 2 functional adults coordinating the schedules of our children, rather than former lovers navigating the wreckage of everything we once promised each other. She was polite, always polite. Almost too polite. It was the kind of forced civility that felt worse than outright hostility, because at least anger still implied there was something left to fight for. But she was resolute, composed, as though she had been preparing for this for so long that she'd already said goodbye to me in her heart years before she ever spoke the words out loud. I remember one afternoon when I came to pick up the kids after school. She met me at the door, her hair pulled back, wearing a soft gray sweater I used to love. I looked at her and felt something rise in my throat, grief or nostalgia, or the humiliating ache of still wanting the person who no longer wants you. For a second I thought she might say something more, something real, something that wasn't scripted or sanitized for the sake of our fragile truce. But she only handed me our daughter's backpack and murmured, "They've already had snacks," before stepping back into the house and closing the door behind her like it cost her nothing. The kids, in their beautiful innocence, adapted faster than I did. Children are resilient in a way that adults rarely are, and soon they learned to move between our homes with practiced ease, remembering which pajamas stayed at Daddy's apartment and which stuffed animals belonged at Mommy's. But even so, there were moments when the confusion bled through, moments that made my chest feel like it was caving in. One night, as I was tucking my son into the small twin bed I'd bought for him, so much smaller than the one he used to have at home, he looked up at me with his big, earnest eyes and asked, "Daddy, are you going to get married to Mommy again someday?" I had to sit on the edge of the bed, pressing my palm against my chest like I could hold my heart together with sheer force of will. I told him the truth as gently as I could, that sometimes mommies and daddies love each other but can't live together anymore, and that it doesn't mean he was loved any less. But the look on his face told me that no matter how carefully I tried to protect him, a part of his world had cracked open, just like mine had, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. After he fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room for hours, the glow of the television flickering over unopened boxes I hadn't had the energy to unpack. I thought about how I had spent Christmas morning believing we were still a family, how she must have looked at me across the room and felt nothing but the burden of a secret she was finally ready to let slip free. I wondered if she'd been relieved when she said it, if it felt like taking off a mask she'd been wearing so long she'd forgotten the shape of her own face underneath. I wondered if she was happier now. Some nights I found myself driving past our old house, headlights sweeping over the front porch I helped build, the flower beds she planted in the spring, the window where we used to stand and watch thunderstorms roll across the neighborhood. I'd park down the street with the engine idling and tell myself I was just making sure everything was okay, that the kids were safe, but deep down I knew it was about something else. It was about mourning. About admitting that love doesn't always end in fire and fury. Sometimes it just dissolves quietly while you're busy living your life, and by the time you notice the rot, it's too late to save anything. There was a particular night in early March, cold, damp, the kind of night that seeps into your bones, when I pulled into that familiar street and saw her silhouette in the kitchen window. She was laughing with someone on the phone, her face lit by the glow over the sink, her hair tucked behind her ear in the way I used to find unbearably tender. For a moment, the sight of her looking so peaceful made me hate her in a way I didn't know I was capable of. Not because she was moving on, God knew she had the right, but because I was still stuck in the wreckage while she seemed to be stepping out of it, unscathed. I drove away before I could do something humiliating, like knock on the door or beg her to take me back. I knew, even in the worst moments of grief, that nothing I said or did would change her mind. She had already left me long before she spoke it out loud. And that, perhaps, was the hardest part to accept, that the woman I loved was never coming back, because she hadn't been there in a very long time. In therapy, my counselor asked me once what I missed most, and the question undid me more than I expected. Because it wasn't the big things I mourned, not the wedding or the house, or even the idea of growing old together. It was the small, unremarkable intimacies that made up the fabric of a shared life. The way she used to hum under her breath when she did the dishes. The warmth of her body next to mine in the dark. The feeling of her hand on my shoulder when I came home from a long day and didn't have to explain why I was tired, because she already knew. I missed the comfort of being known. I missed the version of myself I was when she still loved me. I'm still figuring out who I am without her. Still learning how to fill the hours when the kids are with her. How to build a life that isn't just an echo of the one I lost. Some days I feel almost hopeful, like maybe this clean break will eventually lead me somewhere better, somewhere honest. But other days, especially on holidays or when the kids ask why mommy doesn't wear her wedding ring anymore, it feels like I'm standing in the ruins of something I can never rebuild. And the strangest part is that life keeps moving anyway. The bills come due, the dishes pile up, the kids keep growing. There are soccer games to attend, school projects to help with, birthday parties to plan. The world doesn't care that my heart is still bruised, still learning how to beat in a chest that feels too empty. If there's one thing I've learned in all of this, it's that grief is not linear. Some mornings I wake up and feel almost normal, like the past year was just a nightmare I finally escaped. And then something small, a song on the radio, a familiar recipe, the scent of her shampoo on the kids' hair, will send me spiraling back into that raw December morning, when she looked me in the eye and told me she didn't love me anymore. I don't know when or if I'll ever be completely okay. But I'm starting to believe that maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is simply to keep going, to keep showing up for the children who still need me, to keep building something new from the pieces that remain. Because as much as I want to rewind time, to go back to the moment before she spoke the words that shattered everything, I can't. All I can do is try to become someone who can survive it, and someday someone who can love again without fear.